It can be hard to find a decent horror game these days. It doesn't rely on jump scares or overplayed gimmicks. And it's even harder to find one that hasn't been fucking ruined by Let's Players. Anyway, a long time ago, horror in gaming was a lot simpler. And truly some of the best horror games out there are some of the older games in general. Half-Life, for instance, whilst not an outright horror game, did have its fair share of spooky moments. But it was a little-known mod named They Hunger which stuck in my mind much more than Half-Life ever did. Now, They Hunger was a mod developed single-handedly by a guy named Manke. Did I pronounce that right? Where you take on the role of some poor schmo who finds himself stranded in a country town overrun with zombies and strange phenomena. Pretty much from the start, the game gives you little to no information on what the hell is happening, and all you've got initially is an umbrella to defend yourself with. Yes, an umbrella. From there, you just explore the area until you reach a nearby town where it seems that you're just a fly caught in a very big and corrupted web. Every other little tidbit of information regarding the plot is either given in-game or not at all. All of the weapons and enemies are pretty much just reskins of what you've seen in Half-Life, with maybe a couple of actual new additions. The vast majority of enemies encountered are zombies, but later in the game you take on some more frightening and creative creations. One of my favourite is a sort of Frankenstein monster you encounter about halfway through the campaign, which moves surprisingly fast for its size and is just downright creepy to look at. Now, the mod is broken up into 3 episodes which will take anywhere from about 60 to 90 minutes to complete each, which for a mod is pretty impressive in terms of length. Each chapter also has a different theme and feel. The first chapter is straight out survival horror, where you're up against an insurmountable force of enemies with very little ammunition or health items. The second chapter is a combination of action and horror, where you're forced into a lot more combat sections and get some heavy-duty weaponry. And the final chapter is just all-out schlock mixed with more action. By the end of this chapter, you're walking around with a minigun and shooting enemy soldiers from a chopper. All in all, it's kind of like Reanimator meets Night of the Living Dead, mixed with elements from Hammer and Troma horror films. I mean that in an endearing way, of course. Generally, the level design and layout is really impressive. It's not just a matter of moving down a series of corridors, and a fair bit of backtracking and basic puzzle solving is required to progress onward. Even I found myself stumped every now and then when I couldn't figure out what I had to do next. And often when you do figure it out, it was staring you right in the face the entire time. But the mod's real strength is its atmosphere, which is fantastic even by today's standards. This is a creepy game to be sure, and it joins the ranks of the few video games that gave me nightmares in my younger years. I think it's a combination of the lighting, certain bits of the voice acting, and just the theme in general. I mean, it's got this really morbid, foreboding tone pretty much the entire time. And there's a lot of great little simplistic set pieces that really catch you off guard. It isn't perfect though, to be honest. All things considered, the quality of the mod kind of dips off the more you play it, with the last chapter being kind of stupid, as I mentioned earlier. It's not bad, but it does feel a lot different to the previous chapters. Certain areas can be really tricky as well due to the absence of health and ammo pickups, and I can't even imagine getting through the game on the highest difficulty, as I had a hell of a time on the normal setting. And lastly, if you don't like Half-Life, then you'll probably hate this, as the gunplay and controls are practically identical. And the game has some similar platforming and combat scenarios that feel really familiar. And yes, I guess the controls do kind of suck a bit in that regard, but you can get used to them the more you play. But for a free mod developed by a single person, you can't really complain, and I'd be really surprised if this mod didn't spook out most of the general gaming population. I don't really want to say too much else to spoil this, but I do think it's still a great experience for people who can appreciate older games and don't mind putting up with some dated visuals and gameplay mechanics. Maybe someday the sequel will actually see the light of day, but for now, They Hunger is sure to keep you up at night.
We're turning out our regular programming.